How is everybody? Excellente. For those who don't know us, I am Nayaswami Daiva, and this is Nayaswami Gangamata, and we're thrilled to be sharing this morning with you. There's a story in the Bible of Jesus walking along, and it's toward the end of his life. It's toward the end of his ministry. And he says, "You must eat my body and drink my blood." And it was, during a time when, there were very fixed rules in the Jewish tradition, and there were just things you didn't talk about or do. You couldn't even let into your mind, you didn't even eat pork or a million things that were clean, and there were lines on clean and unclean. This was way out there, past the line. And it says in there, and picture it, this is not a very refined time spiritually, and it says in there that a bunch of his disciples would talk amongst themselves and say, "This is a hard teaching," and many of them walked no more with him. He was talking about, you have to absorb my consciousness, you have to express the thoughts and ideas and experiences that I have imbued to you, I've offered to you. You have to drink my body and eat my blood. You've got to take them in and absorb them into yourself. So he wasn't talking physically. But if you didn't have the subtlety of understanding, you were a little bit stuck, and many of them walked no more with him. The reading today reminded me of that because we have some young people in here. And I can just see them taking advantage of that reading and turning on their mothers and saying, "But it said so in the Bible." What's really being discussed there, is we have to understand that we all come from God. We come through our parents. We come connected to our friends, but we come from God. We dissolve back into God. And when we awake spiritually, we discover that it's only been God acting through us and through everybody else. There has been no other reality. Yogananda, when he was a young man, he was driven, and it talked about that a little bit, driven to try and find God inside himself. And at any expense, he was willing to do that. And as he grew up into young manhood, he had a relationship with his guru, the picture next to him, Swami Sri Yukteswar, who was guiding his life into the fulfillment of his highest aspiration. And as he became a young man, he spoke with his guru and said, "I would like to take Swami vows. I would like to become a Swami." And his guru said, "I think you should get married." And he said, "But I only want God." And then he said, "I think you should get married." I think he said it 3 times. And again, Yogananda said, "But sir, I only want to love God. I just want to give my life to the search and to serving God." And he said it a 3rd time, and finally, and it turns out, and again, Yogananda renounced marriage. It turns out that Yogananda, in his chart, in his astrology, it showed that he would be married 3 times. And so in renouncing it, he renounced all 3 of those commitments that were in his astrological chart. But then, and so his guru said, "Okay, that's fine, but remember this. If you push away normal human life, if you push away these things, you don't get off the hook. You don't, abdicate your responsibility for family, for children, for wife, for these things." He says, "What you are now responsible for is everybody on behalf of God." So, when we talk about, turning the daughter against the mother and the son against the father, and, what we're talking about is severing the ties of personal love, the ties of smaller commitments, so that we can step into a much greater experience of love. Yogananda said that God gives us our families. He said he gives us our families to test us, but but he also said he gives us our families that we learn how to love. He gives us our spouses and our friends and those close to us so that we learn how to love. But then the fulfillment of that is that we turn and we offer that same love to everyone we meet in expanding circles of understanding and relationship and experience of their happiness, their understanding is as precious to me as my own, and we find with time that it becomes even more precious, even more meaningful. These are real expansions. I looked up the word. I've really enjoyed this topic today, the potentials in this topic today. Victory demands the courage of conviction. Victory demands the courage of conviction. And I thought, what's the difference between victory and success? Because we tend to think in terms of success in our culture and in this time and in this world right now. And it's appropriate that we do so. And so I looked it up. And there's, one place kind of picked up the topic of success is outer achievement. Victory is self-mastery. And that's a brilliant way to pick it up. It's a brilliant way. Victory, self-mastery, demands the courage of conviction. We won't change. We won't become anything different than we are if we can't see what's possible. I love the purification service because we do 2 mantras, we do 2 chants. And the first one is for enlightenment, the ability to see what's possible, to see the light, to see the breadth of where we could be and who we could be. But that's not enough. If that was enough, psychiatry would be all we need in this world, and all the spiritual paths could just go home. We could just rest in psychiatry, because it's important to be able to see. Anybody cringing? It's helpful sometimes, but it's not enough, because we have to not only see what's possible, we have to release ourselves into that possibility. We have to give ourselves over. And so the second mantra is for liberation. It's for that act of surrender into that bigger picture, into that possibility, but we will never do it if we don't have the courage of conviction that that's what's going to really satisfy. And that's what I was born for. And I will accept, in the words of P.G. Woodhouse, no battered repaints. I will accept nothing less than first quality experience of myself in my life. I will only accept the highest that's there, that I can see and aspire to. Now, we can't always see the top of the mountain. It's really fun. Mountain climbers will appreciate this. When you go mountain climbing, you see from a distance, you see the peak, and you know that's where you're going to go. And you get on the mountain, and you just can't see past the next knoll. And you get on it, and the courage of conviction isn't, and you have to have it for the highest peak, but you have to have it for the next knoll. You have to have it for the next step. You have to have it for what's accomplishable in this moment that you can keep anchored to. And it's true on the spiritual path. We sing a great chant. It's, I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. And ultimately, for every single person, for every single soul that has ever been born, that exists now and will ever be born, that's an absolute truth. Because it's only in contact with God that we find the wholeness of our nature, that we find the love we've been seeking, the joy we've been seeking, the power and wisdom we've been looking for in school and in jobs and in money and all the other things. Hi, Jeffrey. Nice to see you. Welcome. Yeah. Thank you. But there are times in the process of growing up, of waking up spiritually. And, I would argue that all growth, all maturing, is a spiritual event. Because it's just simply expansion of consciousness, expansion of awareness, expansion of a sense of identity. When you are in kindergarten, your world's about this big, and when you go into first grade, it's about this big, and by the time you get to college, it's this big. But that's not enough, so you do a graduate program, and then you get a good job, and then you get a better job, and it's always about expanding our sense of relationship to the world. And spirituality just takes it beyond the outer things of this particular life. But the process is still the same. Until we have completely fulfilled, there's no job in the world that's big enough. There's no degree that's big enough. Confucius say, he who stay in school too long die by degrees. It's inner, it's inward. And that's where we make contact with God. If God is omnipresent, we find him first at the very center of our own being, and then we start to experience him elsewhere. But success is victory. Success is accomplishment of something that you've set your mind to. Victory is successes over obstacles. And there are obstacles on the spiritual path. I want to take this into really practical terms because in today's world, it's a troubled world. And nobody with any kind of awareness and any sense of things is going to argue against that. And the masters do not come to reinforce us as victims of the circumstances of either our personal lives or world circumstances. They come to help us dig deep inside, that we find the presence of Spirit, that we find the presence of God. And in that finding, we find freedom, we find energy, we find power, we find wisdom, we find clarity, we find endless joy, which floods through things. And they invite us increasingly. They tell us the top of the mountain is finding God. But the next step is the next victory, the next success that you can have. We're in a time when it is when economics and greed are increasingly troubled. I think it's the top 400 people, wealthiest people in the U.S., own more wealth than, I don't remember what the number was. I think it's like 80% of the rest of the U.S. population all combined. And the spread is growing. But Yogananda said a very interesting thing about success at that level. He said, success isn't your money in the bank. Success isn't having fixed wealth. You know what he said success is? The ability to manifest at will that which you daily need. The ability to manifest at will that which you need. And whether it's, money for your rent or the resources for the meal, or the resources that will help reconstruct this world and change consciousness, it's the ability to manifest at will that which you put your mind on, that which you focus on, that which you turn your heart to. And of course, then they encourage us not to turn our hearts toward whacking our mothers or daughters, but to finding ways to bring meaning and value and light and beauty into this world for the benefit of others. Because what that does is it expands our relationship. Again, I'm going to go back to family. Yogananda said that the purpose of marriage is to bring two souls together so that they learn how to expand their sense of identity. And they discover that somebody else's well-being is more important than their own. Why? Because it's more satisfying. I can promise you as a married man that if Ganga Mata isn't happy,
he's not happy.
It's never happened, by the way. But her happiness deeply affects my own. Not just because if she becomes grumpy, this kind of thing could happen, but because you can feel somebody else's happiness. And it enriches us in ways that we can't imagine if we don't have that experience. And we have a daughter, and her happiness and her husband's happiness affects us directly. And then we live in community, and we discover that Priya's son and his happiness, and her husband, and and Mary and her mother, and Joni, and we start to discover that the happiness of others directly impacts the experience of our own relationship to life in deeply meaningful ways. And so serving others isn't altruistic. It isn't something like, oh, well, I'm going to go do things for others. It's the most selfish thing you can do, is learn to care for others. One saint said, nobody does anything but for selfish motive. Even saints, even the greatest saints, don't do anything they do for anything other than selfish motive. But they've discovered that far greater happiness comes from being selfless than from being shallow and contractive. But the way we start to work on this, the way we start to move to the next hill on the mountain, is we start to set goals that we can succeed in. And we are victorious when we have overcome the battles that face us for that next climb. And there are parts of the climb that are going to be really lovely and just very soft, and the path kind of goes up and down a little bit, and other places where it's going to be really steep, and you got switchbacks all over the place. But victory is when you hit that next step. The same thing is true in our world. Yogananda, I want to read a quote from Yogananda. This is a remarkable quote. He said, and I want to turn this because I think it's one of the things that we need to understand as a group of friends together on the spiritual path. Finding God is the highest thing we can do. But he said, making money honestly and industriously to serve God's work is the next greatest art after the art of realizing God. He said to earn money abundantly. And he really encouraged, he said, everybody should earn as much money as they possibly can, honestly and industriously. He said to earn money abundantly, unselfishly, honestly, and quickly for God and God's work is to make others happy, and to make others happy. And here's where it starts to get traction. It helps develop many sterling character qualities that will aid you on the spiritual as well as the material path. The very kinds of things that we have to develop in order to allow us to earn wealth honestly and industriously are the very same qualities that we need as people who are seeking union with Spirit. We have to learn to be considerate of others. We have to learn to ask not what do I want to give, what do I want to do, but what's needed. And how can we serve that need in a meaningful way? We have to learn, as parents do also, to show up when it's least convenient. At 3 o'clock in the morning when the child is crying, the mother gets up or the father gets up because their happiness becomes clearly more important than your own comfort. Same thing in business, same thing in making money, same thing in serving honestly and industriously, not through the stock market, not through chiseling, not through, finding back doors to wealth, but honestly and industriously developing the character. There's a real truth in the spiritual path that you cannot get what you didn't earn, and you can't avoid what you have earned. You don't have to seek anything. You have to become worthy of it. And if you become worthy of something, you can't avoid it. It will hunt you down. It will find you. And that includes wealth. If you really bring to the table value for others' lives, a reciprocal energy automatically is implied. If we want to bring light into this world, there is nothing outwardly that does not require money as a part of the function of how it works. And if you want to bring light into this world, how you spend your money and how you invest your energy will determine your capacity to do just exactly that. It's true for each one of us. And then they give us all kinds of positive thoughts. Yogananda says of earning wealth, he says, remember that opportunity in life comes by creation and not by chance. It is created by you, either now or in the near or distant past. If you haven't opportunity now, create it by your will, and it shall come to you. It never comes of itself or through good luck. Success is for the hard-working person, a person of creative ability, and one who knows how to economize. Success is for the person who asks opinions of experts before investing. Success is for the person who tries harder to earn after each failure. Success is for the person of incessant working ability. He gives clues on how we can become successful, but in doing that, we waken the power of God within us. And wherever we turn our attention, when we see need, when we see want, when we see people who are, we've got a great privilege today. Prasanna Hankins, who was a part of our Sangha for many years, but is living now in the Sacramento area, came in. And over the years, I've known her now for, is it 8 years, 9 years? 10 years. I've watched her grow in power, in the capacity to access divine healing power, because that's where she's put her attention. And she came up to share with others what she has discovered about how it works. But every one of us every day should be reaching for, what does the mountaintop look like, and what's the next hill look like? What do we want out of our lives, and how can we work together to awaken the power of Spirit so that wherever there's need, we can put our will to it and manifest that which is daily needed. I don't talk of these things idly. I have, over the course of my life, I have put my efforts and money where my mouth is. And since we've been here, just even in Portland, we've watched the development of this temple and teaching center and the expansion of the community, and now the refinement of the school and the school's new campus being developed, and Ananda Center at Laurelwood, and Ananda House, and the new community that's developing out there. Every one of these things came not because we had great, vast resources of wealth in our pockets, but because there was clarity of purpose. It was anchored to the divine vision. And there was a willingness to commit to the fulfillment of these things and bring value into the lives of others. And we've seen it happen with other individuals. Yogananda's gardens are developing now, and it's the same kind of thing. Every day, Janaki Devi and Vyasa get up, and they go, how can we bring this inspiration into this world? And they just keep working it and working it and working it day after day after day. And that's how magic is born, is how beauty is born. And then they give us positive thoughts that we can start to identify. I possess the creative power of Spirit. The infinite intelligence will guide me and solve every problem. I go forth in perfect faith in the power of omnipresent good to bring me what I need at the time I need it. Today I will cultivate initiative. A person of initiative creates something from nothing. They make the impossible possible by the great creative power of Spirit. As I radiate peace and goodwill to others, I open the door for God's love to come to me. Divine love is the magnet that draws to me all good. They give us clue after clue after clue on how it works. And we dig in, we try these things, we apply our minds, we do affirmations that are anchored in the divine. And we find ourselves gradually becoming increasingly open as channels for the grace of God into this world. Victory after victory, success after success, joy after joy, freedom after freedom. And that's how this world will find its way through the troubled times. By truth seekers reaching for that light, allowing themselves to become living expressions, open channels for that goodness into this world, not by wishing idly or sitting back and sitting in church. Somebody once said that, thinking you become a Christian by going to church is like thinking you can become a car by sitting in your garage. We have to do things that awaken within us that latent power, that latent awareness of the Spirit and presence of God inside. And the more we do that, the more we find that we affect this world, that our own joy increases by magnitudes, but also that we affect this world and inspire it toward the light as well. We'll end with this reading. This is from Whispers from Eternity. This is Paramahansa Yogananda's book of prayer demands and poems. He said we should demand of God. We shouldn't ask like beggars, but demand as divine children. Teach me to spend for God's work as I spend for myself. Give me holy health, but give my brothers even more, that I may enjoy my greatest health, not in this little body, but in my expanded being. Give me power, but give it to others more abundantly, that I may wield my own strength through the strength of many. Give me wisdom, that I may make others even more wise, and that I may feel wisdom's rays spreading out over a vast tract of shining minds, for all men are dear to me. Teach me to behold through all eyes to work through all hands, and to feel the throb of my own feelings in all. Teach me to feel, act, strive, earn, and especially spend for all as I do for myself. I want my health to serve also as a model for others' health. I want my own efficiency to turn away from earth's door all inefficiency, And I want the inner freedom that comes with wisdom, that I may enjoy the same freedom in all. May all souls everywhere find spiritual emancipation. Amen. We'll take a moment of silence and then we'll have some music.